All right. Well, welcome everyone that is watching us live on Facebook. Welcome to those of you that are joining us live on Zoom. And welcome also to those of you that are watching the pre-recorded version of this. So if you are in the future for us, welcome to you as well. This is part of CDE's AI Learning with AI, Learning About AI webinar series. And we have had a lot of great questions lately about AI literacy. And so this particular session is helping us to decode what does that even mean. Uh, before we get started, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, whether it's on Facebook or on Zoom, please feel free to introduce yourself and answer the question, what do you think AI literacy means? Any ideas on what you think AI literacy might mean? Welcome. I see some people still joining. And if you're watching this recording on YouTube, you can add a comment as well. So feel free to do that. Welcome, Philip. Welcome, Monica. Morgan, excellent. We've got definitely some California representation here. Glad you all are here. All right, so Philip says AI literacy, the ability to use AI to get tasks done. All right, certainly. Absolutely. And I do see we already got some likes on the Facebook Live. So thank you to our excellent speakers here today that are going to help us to decode what AI literacy is. Excellent. If you're still joining us, feel free to continue introducing yourself and letting us know what you think AI literacy means. We have another response here saying, being knowledgeable about prompts, the uses of AI, and the risks. Excellent. And I'm also hearing people say, I'm here to find out what AI literacy is. You are in the right place. Absolutely. I'm seeing ethics, productivity. Excellent. Perfect, perfect. Thank you for that. I do want to ground us with what caused us to start having this AI webinar series in the first place. So back in September of 2023, California Department of Education was the second state education agency in the nation to come out with AI guidance. It's called Learning with AI, Learning About AI. It is available on the bit.ly there as well as on the QR code. Don't worry if you are listening in the car or something like that. I will be sending all registrants a link to the slides, so you will have that as well. All right. Also wanted to point out that all of the previous recordings of our AI webinars are available on that page also, and this will be once it's ready as well. There's also a resource kit that is a PDF that you can download that you can check out if you are interested in that. And today, my colleague, Dr. Christina Mattis, and I are those that organize this series. And so our question for our excellent speakers today is, what is AI literacy and why does it matter? And so that is what we are truly delving into today. My name is Catherine Goyette. I am the computer science coordinator at CDE, as well as the head of our AI initiatives. And Dr. Christina Mattis, who also helps organize these with me, is our EdTech and Digital Equity Broadband Coordinator. And we want to thank the Information Technology Branch that we are a part of for supporting us in this work to bring you this information. So one of the reasons that AI literacy has come up as an important topic lately is because you may have seen that there is a new bill that passed, AB 2876, calling for future curriculum frameworks in California to consider adding AI literacy. And so with this, many people are saying, what do you mean by AI literacy? And so, one of the things, while it is not explicitly defined in our guidance, we do have these fundamental skills for educators: safe use, the pros and cons of AI, social impacts, and demystifying it. And I will say that Digital Promise, who is with us here today and has a great framework, as well as Dr. Jennifer Elliman, all have so many connections to these fundamental skills that we believe really do make up AI literacy. So this, what you're going to hear today, is absolutely in line with what CDE is saying. And I did want to let you know that, again, that is in the resource kit as well. So please feel free to check that out when you can. All right, so what I'd like to do now is introduce our first speakers. We have Dr. Patty Ruiz, who's Senior Director of EdTech and Emerging Technologies at Digital Promise, as well as Megan Pattenhouse, a Project Director of Emerging Tech Implementation, both from Digital Promise, an organization that does some amazing things and really supports educators. And thank you so much for being here. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves a bit more, and then I can run through the slides as you'd like.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Like you said, I'm Patti Ruiz, Senior Director of Ed Tech and Emerging Technologies at Digital Promise. I am a former computer science teacher. I also taught Spanish, mostly in middle school and high school, so I'm really excited to be here. I am based in San Diego, California, well, technically Chula Vista, California, for those of you who are familiar with the area. And I'm, like I said, very happy to be here. I will turn it over to Megan.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. I'm also a former educator. I was elementary, if you can't tell by my bright colors, and have spent the last decade or so supporting teachers in implementing emerging technologies and helping them understand how to translate research into practice. So we're excited to dive into that today. And I'm a native of Watsonville, California, so I'm very excited to be with our California educators. So I loved what you all shared in the chat. I feel like everyone touched on pieces of our AI literacy framework. So I'm hoping that what we shared today can help kind of bring it all together for you. So when we talk about AI literacy, what we mean is that we have both the knowledge of how the tools work, of how the systems operate, and the skills. So things like knowing when information is correct information or disinformation, to use, understand, and evaluate those AI systems. And we need those skills so that we can safely and ethically participate in the new technology that is before us. The thing that I really want to draw your attention to here is we're going to talk a lot about technology, but our framework really centers human judgment and justice. And so that's something that I always want you to keep front of mind. I know someone in the chat said ethics, and that's a really good thing to be keeping at top of mind, because while we know that these tools are capable of some pretty incredible things, they are not capable of human judgment, and they are not capable of centering justice. And so we need to make sure that humans stay at the center of all of our work with AI. If we go one more slide, I'll add a little bit of detail here. So this kind of gives you a visual of the overarching framework. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat so that you can access our full AI literacy toolkit. But in terms of use, we want students to have the opportunity to interact and understand the AI, but we also want them to go beyond that into things like creation and problem solving. So really deeply understanding the tool and being able to iterate or create their own tools. And so that use is really important, and we have seen a lot of districts and schools and teachers start with that use part, but we also really critically want them to be understanding what's happening and evaluating. And so in order to do that, we've got our AI literacy practices, which you see there along the bottom. So things like algorithmic thinking, abstraction and decomposition, you'll see ethics and impact there, understanding mis and disinformation. These are all practices that are going to help students with that, with each of those pieces, not only the use, but also understanding and evaluating AI tools. I know that there are some of you who your body tensed up and you started being like, sorry, I can't add another thing to my plate. Like, no. And you almost left the Zoom, I can tell. But the thing that I want to make sure that you understand is if we go to the next slide, these things are all grounded in things we've been doing for years and years. So things like digital citizenship, media literacy, data literacy, and computational thinking. All of these things are included in efforts that we are already using. And they are things that are going to last us the test of time. Whatever technology comes next, we're going to need to be able to understand how to engage in digital communication and expression. We're going to need to be able to do data analysis and inference. And so these are skills that we should be building into our curriculum and opportunities for students to learn even before they get to the part where they're using the tools, because we know that AI tools can, for example, present us with disinformation or misinformation. And so students need the opportunity to practice and build those skills so that when we get to the use part, they're able to critically evaluate what they're seeing there. And I'm going to pass it over to Pati to add about our AI literacy framework.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. We did get a question in chat from Carrie, who is asking, do you know of high schools that are practicing these frameworks and or tools? And yes, there are several districts that we worked with that are part of the League of Innovative Schools, and also some of our Verizon Innovative Learning schools that are integrating our AI literacy frameworks into their contexts. And what we're finding is that they are doing that by taking their existing frameworks, pedagogical frameworks, and integrating this AI literacy framework into their instructional core. The league that I mentioned is the League of Innovative Schools, and I'm sure Megan's finding a link so that she can drop that information. We will also share a piece that I co-authored with a colleague, Kellyanne Tsai, in School Administrator back in November that describes some of these districts that are integrating this work. So you will get that as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next section. So on the next slide, you'll just see that we did write up a position paper that is freely available on our website at the link that Megan shared, and I'm sure Catherine will be sharing all of these links later. So please take a look at the position paper. There's also a really nice set of two different resources on that website. One is an executive summary, and then another one that outlines and kind of expands on the skills and practices and the modes of engagement, the understand, use, and evaluate. And then we do get in a little bit more into the human judgment piece, as well as the centering judgment, which we collaborated with many of our external colleagues with, including the Kapoor Center, and built on their computer science education centering justice work. So again, AI literacy, a subset of computer science. And so we are just kind of digging in more specifically into the AI specific skills and practices, as Megan said, that draw on foundational literacies and practices, including the computational thinking work that we've been working with most recently, but then also the digital literacy, digital citizenship, and the media literacy. One of the connections that we like to make is this is so connected to how we responded early on to media literacy, right? We made some mistakes in not supporting learners, students, be thoughtful about the evaluation of social media, and it's important that we learn from some of those mistakes that we made early on with social media and the availability of these different forms of media on phones readily. So we're learning and building on those foundational literacies with this work. A little bit more about the responsible use of emerging technologies, including generative AI, is work that I will move on to describing now. So this work draws on a National Science Foundation grant that I won titled Responsible, Ethical, and Effective Acceptable Use Policies for the Integration of Generative AI in U.S. School Districts and Beyond. And again, this was funded by the National Science Foundation. It's a collaboration where we worked with 10 different districts across the US, and with 11 district leaders from those districts. And what these leaders wanted to learn was how are district leaders wrestling with the challenges and what supports are needed for classroom teachers, for students, as well as for families. So over the course of a year, we worked to explore these questions with our district leaders who conducted interviews of their own communities. And so we compiled all of that data and we identified 5 key priorities that districts need to be considering as they develop their responsible use of AI, and specifically generative AI is what we focused on. Although in our findings, we arrived at the conclusion that these 5 areas will help support, develop responsible use policies, not just for the use of generative AI, but also more broadly for emerging technologies that are coming in the future. So those 5 areas include very prominently, the first one is AI literacy, and we'll see this on the next slide. So we talked about the development of AI literacy and the need to develop professional learning opportunities for learners, but for educators so that they can support their learners as well, right? We also found that families are coming to school leaders, to teachers, to principals, assistant principals, and wanting to learn more as well. So the importance of developing that professional learning in AI literacy was key. And then also prioritizing and protecting learner-teacher community data, because there's a lot of data being transferred with AI and a lot of use implications of data, right? We know that we're not allowed to put in PII of our students into these Gen AI systems and tools, but we need to be very clear about those guidelines for teachers as well as students and as well as families. We also talked about transparency, and what we mean by transparency is not what developers think of when they think of the word transparency, which means being able to understand the model that's being used for Gen AI. When we talk about transparency, we're talking about being open about the processes as teachers, as leaders, as district state representatives, about the processes that we're using when selecting Gen AI tools for use by learners or by teachers, and sharing developments or changes in guidance for use. So we saw early on New York City Public Schools ban ChatGPT, right? And then they went back and they opened it back up. So one of the areas that our district leaders identified was the importance of transparent and clear communication around these changes. They also talked about implementation guidelines, and this goes hand in hand with the professional learning that I was talking about earlier, and with giving clear examples of guiding language for ways that teachers, learners, and others can implement Gen AI to the best of their abilities. We also talked a lot about ethics and emphasized the need, again, to be responsible. I proposed this NSF project with acceptable use policy, and the district leaders taught me, no, we're not using acceptable. That's very counter to what we're trying to do. We want to be asset framing these conversations, and so we're using responsible use. And it's also not a policy with AI, right? We're providing guidelines because this technology is moving so quickly that we need to be able to adjust. So that was one of the big aha moments for us, right? It's responsible use guidelines, not necessarily policies, and that works state to classroom level, right? So that was a big thing. We need to be acknowledging the biases of both the humans that are generating the content that this is building on, but also the synthetic outputs that these tools and systems are generating. So there are biases in both. And as we begin to train models with synthetic outputs, we get farther and farther from reality and the truth, and we need to be continually evaluating those outputs, right? A teacher has that expertise, and going back to the human judgment piece that we center in our AI literacy guidelines, in our AI literacy framework, the teacher, right, is the subject matter expert. They are the ones who are able to guide learners to be able to evaluate the synthetic outputs of a Gen AI system or tool. So we need to be designing learning experiences where we are modeling that ethical use. And we also need to be talking to our learners about the environmental impacts of these systems and models, something that we're not talking enough about. We also need to be helping them understand that it's not magic, but rather someone in the background has tagged images or has tagged data so that we can query quickly and get generated responses pretty quickly. So let's also think about the top of the decision tree, which is, should I or should I not use generative AI? What are my considerations? Like, is a Google search just as good? Would a Google search be better? Should I just go to Wikipedia? Like, what are the levels of need that I have for the generation of this content? Megan and I were working on a big project recently, and we had a lot to do for that project. Time was of the essence. One of the things Megan and I discussed was using generative AI to come up with alt text descriptions, right, for images, for accessibility reasons. That's a good use of generative AI as long as we're checking the outputs, right, and ensuring that it is keeping with ADA, WCAG 2.0 compatibility, right? So thinking through, do I use it or not? It does have an environmental impact. I need to be aware of this. Lots of students that I talk to are not aware of that environmental impact. And as soon as they learn, they're upset that they didn't know earlier. So that's a big one for us. And then we get to the evaluation and impact. So regularly evaluating AI systems and tools. And we need to be asking the question, are they beneficial or are they causing harm for my community, for my students, for their families? And those are some of the considerations that we're talking about when we're evaluating AI systems and tools. Megan and I are happy to talk more about all of these topics. And like I said, Catherine will share that PDF of that article that was in School Administrator back in November, where you can learn a little bit more about that. Megan's already shared links in chat. And Megan, I'm going to hand it over to you for a final wrap up.
Thanks so much, Pati. Again, the thing we really want you to take away is that humans need to stay at the center of this work, and we need to be thinking critically about how we're using these tools. One of the things it requires is lots of conversations. This is not something that we can figure out in isolation. We need to be talking to each other. Part of those ethics conversations is that communication with each other and understanding, what do we value, and is the way that we're using these tools reflecting the values that we have. So we hope that the resources that we were able to share kind of give you a frame for where to start. It helps you kind of pull together all the threads that you all shared in that chat at the very beginning. It is a lot to keep in mind, but we only get better at it the more that we do it. And so we hope that this gives you some tools for you to start using, understanding, and evaluating these tools and continuing that cycle, so that as we understand them more, our critical analysis gets better and better.
Thank you so much, Megan and Pati. This was fantastic. I love that you called out some of the responses from the chats and brought those in, and really have this holistic view of AI literacy. And also that you called out that some of these terms may sound a little scary to someone who's not familiar with computer science, so to speak, and yet there are so many ways that we can engage with conversations with students and learn more about this together. And so that integrated approach, I think, is fantastic. Also, want to thank you for bringing up the safety piece, because there's a lot of students and educators that might not be aware of the risks to their data, so to speak. So thank you so much. I am checking the chat if there are those that have additional questions. And again, There will be a link to these slides sent to all registrants as well. So such fantastic work. We really appreciate, like I said, that holistic view and all of the resources that Digital Promise shares. So thank you for that. I wanted to, we also have another incredible speaker for us today. We like to have multiple voices in our webinars. And so I am so pleased to introduce Dr. Jennifer Elliman, who has been doing some great work with not just AI literacy, but kind of the social impacts. She has a social studies background as well and does a lot of work with that. And absolutely, as Digital Promise said, that Justice and Equity Center as well, which is very important to us here at CDE as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing in a moment so that Dr. Elliman can go ahead and introduce herself and start sharing your insight about AI literacy.
Thanks, Kat. Hi, everyone. I will go ahead and share my slides in the chat and share a little bit about myself and get started here. So I am a longtime educator, high school teacher for several years. I also worked in preschool through 12th grade programs, youth enrichment programs, became an administrator, worked at the district and county office levels, and now I get to work statewide within higher education, supporting TK through 12 educators and leaders across California. And I've been doing a lot of collaboration around AI literacy that I'm excited to share with you today. And I appreciate the framing from the California Department of Education, learning with AI, learning about AI. So starting with learning with AI and AI literacy, posing the question, AI literacy, with whom and how? So what is AI literacy anyway? Why is it important? There are some definitions here from the US Department of Education for algorithmic literacy, which includes the knowledge of underlying principles and processes and biases that shape algorithms and their implications for individuals, society, and decision making, understanding how to interact effectively with AI and the ethical implications of using generative AI tools. And AI literacy includes the knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed to engage with AI safely. This skill set is about understanding AI's strengths, limits, and impacts to make informed decisions about its integration and to prepare learners for the AI-driven future. We also have the imperative from the revised standards for the California teaching profession, which came out in 2024 to incorporate digital literacy and citizenship into lessons, including technical skills, privacy safeguards, and the ethical use of social media, copyrighted materials, and artificial intelligence. So collaborating with teachers and leaders statewide, we are making connections from Assembly Bill 2876, which defines artificial intelligence literacy for us, as well as media literacy and digital citizenship. And we're using this to inform our instructional planning, our curriculum mapping, our scope and sequence. So how might we infuse AI literacy across the curriculum in English language arts, English language development, history, social science, science, math, computer science, career technical education, and other subject areas as appropriate? Well, first, let's see how we are defining it here. AI literacy, the knowledge, skills, and attitudes associated with how artificial intelligence works, including its principles, concepts, and applications, as well as how to use AI, its limitations, implications, and ethical considerations. So focusing on ethics is really important, as well as the connections with media literacy. We know that there are algorithmic media that are influencing our students, and that media literacy skills are critical to being able to evaluate what's truth, what's misinformation, what's disinformation. So media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and use media and information, and encompasses the foundational skills that lead to digital citizenship, which are those diverse set of skills related to current technology and social media, including the norms of appropriate, responsible, and healthy behavior. So starting with that, we know these are not in our frameworks yet that are AI specific, but we definitely have standards that connect to AI literacy that we can build from now. We don't have to wait until the new frameworks are adopted several years from now, we can collaborate on these topics now because we know students need this for their future. So we can continue to collaborate within the computer science standards and science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And computer science specifically is an example standard where students study, discuss, and think critically about the potential impacts, implications of emerging technologies on larger social, economic, and political structures with evidence from credible sources. The ELA ELD framework has Chapter 10, Learning in the 21st Century, cites the model school library standards, K-12, and standards related to the ethical, legal, and safe use of information in print, media, and online resources for every grade level. And then with history, social science, students should also discuss the responsibility of citizens to be informed about public issues by using the media wisely, and also describe the role of broadcast, print, and electronic media, including the internet, as a means of communication in American politics. So we know how important this is. We've seen it in our most recent elections and political cycles. We see the influence of the technology industry on the political process and how important it is to empower our students, empower our adults, educators, families, to be empowered with the knowledge they need for the future. And not just the future, they need it now. So there are some existing resources, again, beyond what the standards and frameworks will become, but still connected to standards-based learning today in how we plan using the Universal Design for Learning guidelines, which are written into every curriculum framework and every subject. And so we can use that as a basis. We can also use this 5 big ideas wheel from AI for K-12, which is a framework for inclusive AI learning designed for diverse learners when combined with UDL. And so oftentimes our conversations learning with AI start with the tools, right? People say AI literacy is about which tools they're using. I heard that earlier, to be more efficient, to be more productive. But we want to be critical consumers and curators of which tools we're using and why. Which learning goals does it support and how? And so we invite you to add to the Padlet and add some responses. How are you designing learning with and about AI? And it can relate to the tools you're using, but we want to get past which tools and again, get to the why. Why are we using these tools and what are they doing that goes beyond what we might think of through the SAMR model lens, which stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition by Dr. Ruben Puentadura. And building upon that to think about how we can use generative AI tools and AI tools to increase access, inclusion, and equitable learning experiences for all students to promote learner agency, which is the ultimate goal of UDL. We can also think about it through the TPAC lens of the technological, pedagogical, content knowledge framework, and the research that continues to emerge about what are best and emerging and research-based and becoming evidence-based practices around these tools, while also honoring the policies and guidelines in place. We know that we need guardrails, and there are existing policies like FERPA and age requirements, like most of these apps, where students need to be age 13 and up with parent permission to use the tools. But we can start learning about these at a very young age in a way that's developmentally appropriate. And so there are resources like the US Department of Education's guide for educators. They have a toolkit for education leaders that goes into ethics, which includes pedagogical appropriateness, children's rights, AI literacy, teacher well-being, equitable instruction and access. We also have examples internationally, the AI competency framework for teachers and for students from UNESCO, and then a new generative AI for education hub research study repository from Stanford's Scale Initiative Accelerator for Learning. There are also emerging practices directly from the classroom. We're learning from teachers and students using resources like this AI assessment scale by Perkins, Furs, Rowan, McVaugh. And there are other variations of this. You might have seen it when it first came out as like a red, yellow, green, looks like a stoplight tool. to help with teachers and students being transparent about when students can use AI, how they can use it on various assignments in various subject areas for various purposes aligned to the standards and learning goals. So this can range from no AI, right? There are times where we actually need to center our humanity. We need to actually learn the skill at a foundational level, and those fundamental skills that we learn before we start using the computers and screens. We know that many students are on these devices enough, so we want to be really intentional about how we're using these tools. Or we could, use AI for specific purposes, like to help plan, right? People oftentimes refer to AI as a thought partner or a collaborator or your AI agent or doppelganger. But we also need to be really careful about how we use those terms, not to anthropomorphize the tools. And again, remember that these are biased based on what data they're trained with, how they're programmed, and students need to be aware of that from a very young age. And then also using AI for various purposes, collaborating, full AI to create something entirely new, and exploring with AI for different possibilities and emerging practices. So there are some resources here. You can go, these are all hyperlinked from the slide deck. Next, shifting to learning about AI. This gets deeper. Beyond the tools for learning about AI, computer science, for career readiness, why do we pursue AI literacy? So, looking at some different definitions, you may have seen some of these before. Going back to our roots in critical literacy, Paulo Freire wrote about liberation, and critical literacy is both a narrative for agency as well as a referent for critique. So we think about critical consciousness, transformative consciousness, and transformative change. And then there are other lenses we can use to inform our use of AI, like critical digital literacy, interrogating digital media and technologies themselves, critical media literacy, interrogating the power of the media industries and how they determine the stories and messages to which we're the audience, critical literacy, critical AI literacy, developing awareness of social justice issues and cultivating in learners a disposition to redress them beyond all of the other components of understanding how AI works, assessing appropriate use, crafting effective prompts, examining ethical issues, recognizing inequities and biases. And then I added here critical Gen AI literacy, which I wrote about in this article, Teaching Critical Gen AI Literacy, Empowering Students for Digital Democracy, published in Literacy Today magazine by the International Literacy Association, which I focused in more about deciphering fact from misinformation and disinformation, identifying claims perpetuated by bots and deepfakes, countering messages and systems that reinforce stereotypes and harm, and exploring new ways of learning. And so in this article, empowering students for a digital democracy is with civic engagement strategies, including creating digital media content as part of project-based learning, universal design for learning, culturally relevant and critical digital pedagogy. And I'm also inspired by Dr. Goldie Muhammad's book, Cultivating Genius, and her next book, Unearthing Joy, in which she identifies these pursuits of identity, skills, intellect, criticality, and joy in her framework for historically responsive literacy. Building on this, I wrote these lessons on critical AI literacy, ethics, and justice, which are now high quality lessons posted to California Educators Together, which focus on critical Gen AI literacy, ethics, connections to ethnic studies, and critical civic inquiry. So lessons include these on AI bias and harm, with the question, how is AI used in ways that reinforce bias and prejudice? And also, how do we create counter demos to that end of giving students the agency to become the developers, the programmers, the creators of the future, so that they are not passive consumers who are being influenced and manipulated, but who are empowered in their democracy, their futures. And this goes beyond the college, career, and individual level to the collective level and even the global level. So this next lesson is AI environmental impact, asking how does using Gen AI impact the environment and what should we do about it? And then AI media and politics, how is AI used to influence public opinion of political issues? These lessons focus on critical artificial intelligence literacy, ethics and justice, with environmental literacy, critical media literacy, and digital citizenship. These are also posted to the National AI Literacy Day website, which we know is tomorrow. So these are linked from this website, and you'll find more information about activities happening, including with the CDE tomorrow on National AI Literacy Day. And another connection here with a media literacy coalition I'm collaborating with in California and statewide, and we have some resources and events to share with you there. So moving forward, designing critical AI literacy and deeper learning. Here are some examples to possibly critically review and adapt, which include grade band progression charts from AI for K-12, including one on societal impact. There is also an AI scope and sequence for K-12 that just came out yesterday. So again, these are new. So, these are not endorsements, disclaimer here, but just some resources. We're seeing people coming out with some ideas, these concepts, curriculum maps, and resources they're proposing. And then there's an AI literacy curriculum here, AI Literacy Curriculum Hub, which is basically a spreadsheet of all of these resources put together. Many of them are grant funded so that these lessons can be provided for free for teachers to explore and apply in the context that they teach in, grade level, standards aligned, how it might be appropriate for them and their students. And we look forward to continuing the conversation and collaboration. So I ask, what emerging practices might we collaborate on? And so we definitely invite you to join AI for CA on California Educators Together. It's a group, and the Padlet link is here. Again, please come back and share any ideas that you have to our collaborative Padlet. And I'm also collaborating with a group, the Clear AI Initiative, which is the Center for Leadership, Equity, and Research. Dr. Ken Magdaleno is the executive director. He's here on the webinar now. And we started this AI initiative, which we're continuing to collaborate on best practices and supporting districts. And we invite people to apply to be on the state AI work group, but also we want to support you in your local communities and also to connect with educators statewide to collaborate on instructional planning and the learning that will be happening with youth, adults, and in communities so that youth have a voice and a say, and everybody in the community has a say in what the role of AI should be in our society. It's not fixed, it's not set, it's not regulated, or under-regulated, many would argue at this point. And we can discuss, what are the costs and benefits of that and other policy decisions and economic decisions, and environmental decisions that might be made in the future. So we will pause there and checking out the chat. We would love to follow up. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So appreciate the reminder about environmental impacts of AI. I know you some students don't know, but also a lot of adults are not aware. It's not out there in the ether, so to speak, as much as maybe it could be. So thank you for that reminder, and just the further building upon Digital Promises center of human justice and humans in the loop. Great to hear all of these, all of your insight, but also thank you for meeting our teachers where they're at and giving some resources to lessons, because sometimes we just need to know, how do we get started? So really appreciate that. I do want to give some time. We'll check the chat and such, but if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask in the chat or on Facebook, on that chat, feel free to do so. And I do see there was some great, thanks for your critical lens, we're hearing, Jennifer, and also some some agreement and shout outs, myself included, to Goldie Mohammed's book. Thank you. Excellent. All right. Oh, I see. Frank, if you want to unmute and ask, that would be fine.
I want to say, ladies, just so much inspiration for having you guys speak. And so let me just give you a little history. I teach the IT Academy at La Quinta High School. And so this is really hitting right on the mark. And tomorrow I'm having we call it WITS. It's the Women in Technology Summit for my female students. And we have speakers come on there. So I would be so honored if you guys would consider being some of our speakers for next year. And it's just amazing. One of the questions I do have though is I know that what you guys are going over today, I teach that almost every day to my students because of the academy, but it seems like it's a big struggle with the rest of the core teachers at our campus. They just, they're teaching English, they're teaching math, they're teaching whatever, and they don't have time to do all the other stuff. So I know I go over it in my classroom almost every day. Any suggestions on how to break through and get everybody on board?
I mean, that is the challenge, right, Frank? Getting everyone on board and ensuring consistent and cumulative access to these skills. It's the same thing we've seen with computer science education as well. And that's why we're focusing on professional learning for educators, and with the advice to go slow, right? This is overwhelming for a lot of us. And one of the reasons we made a concerted effort to connect this to foundational literacies is because that's more accessible, right? Teachers know the 21st century skills. How does that connect, and how do we adjust and adapt for these AI systems, tools, and practices that we need to be engaging with? So we like to engage folks, and we find that there are on-ramps at different points in our AI literacy framework. Sometimes that means the critical pieces that Jennifer highlighted in her presentation, right? The asking questions of where are the biases? Because we know there are in these generated outputs. Like, where are the errors? That critical understanding of the AI systems and tools and those outputs, and how it might harm communities, right? We've seen in the news, the media literacy piece is always engaging, but we've seen these systems and tools cause great harm to learners, to college students. And those are ways to open up conversations without even getting into the technology, right? We don't need to get into the neural networks that are generating these outputs, right? We can have the conversation from an ethical perspective about how to protect ourselves, protect our data. Like, what are our choices? What level of agency do we have when we're using these systems and tools? And starting with that critical understanding of the outputs, how they're being generated, and how they might be causing harm environmentally, socially, all of these areas. I'm sure Jennifer can jump in with other advice.
Yeah, I think it's really important to take the time to have conversations as adult learners so that we can practice what it is that we want students to be able to do in our classrooms as well. And so we definitely don't want to overwhelm teachers. I agree that it's okay to set a pace that's reasonable, and so teachers don't feel like too much is added to their plates all at once. And revising our course scope and sequence plans each year would be important to do as well, as far as what are our priority standards and who are our students. We want their identities to be represented in the curriculum. So I love, Frank, that you're having this Day of AI event and you're focusing on who is currently underrepresented in roles as tech leaders, like girls, and especially girls of color who need to see themselves in these leadership roles. And so we, love to come and be a guest speaker and learn in with your students. And also, it would be great to have more of your teachers, maybe who aren't leading the event, be able to observe and see what this looks like, so that they can get inspired and seeing some good examples in practice, so then they can come away with like, oh, okay, maybe that's not the whole heavy lift of the big event, but some of these conversations that we can start infusing in our classrooms with our students, connecting to current events and asking students, what do you notice? What do you wonder? What's happening for you? You know, have you tried AI? What have you used it for? Because none of us know all of the answers. And just because somebody is really proficient at using AI tools doesn't necessarily mean they're enthusiastic about them either. So we want to make room in our conversations for techno skepticism, because even some of the women of AI who have written about, there was a Rolling Stone article back a couple of years ago, the women who warned us about AI, researchers like Dr. Joy Boylan-Weenie, Timnit Gebru, Sophia Noble, and others who write about what are the dangers and harms of technology, artificial intelligence, and what can we do to prevent really terrible things from happening. And it's really important that we discuss what that could be, and also discuss with our students in a way that's age appropriate, aligned to their standards, and also asking them what's happening, what do they notice in the world around them, connecting that in different ways within the curriculum. So we know that we need to go back to like the CDE guidance, right? What are the costs and benefits, the pros and cons, and really evaluate those, because we see some transformative ways that AI is being applied and experimented with. Really, we're in this phase of experimentation, and we're learning so much that in the future we'll look back and say, oh, if we only knew then what we know now, right, we would do things differently. But we're learning all of that right now, and there are a lot of lessons we can learn from computer scientists, but also people in different fields who can weigh in. I mean, even philosophers can weigh in on, well, you know, what might be the appropriate use and relationship between humans and their technologies, and the way we might be offloading some of the tasks cognitively to AI that could actually be hurting us, but then in some ways could actually be helping us. And then what are some ways that we can improve the sustainability in the technologies that are being developed, and how might we advocate for companies to actually value that and prioritize that in the development as well. So again, I think it just, yeah, the collaboration is really important.
Yeah, because I really feel that I'm not the only one out there. You know, I got 20, 30-year veteran teachers who are my colleagues, and they're just like, you know, they're the ones who didn't want to have calculators in school, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's a tough run, but we're trying to get there.
Yeah, and criticism is often an act of love, right? New things can be scary, so I think it's important that we're patient with each other, and it's a process, and we might actually be able to build a shared vision on common ground from what we do agree on, and then as we go, we don't have to agree on everything, and we can continue to be critical friends with our pedagogical diversity, and then also just respecting, you know, how the learning is happening differently in different spaces. So definitely appreciate what you're doing, and the work moving forward.
Thank you, Frank, for the question. Thank you, Pati and Jennifer, for the responses. I did notice, thank you, Megan, for dropping in a link with some crossovers for computational thinking routines for K-5 ELA. So if there are teachers that say, well, I don't really have time for this AI thing and I don't know what to do, but I have to teach ELA, right? Absolutely, that's great. I also heard so many cross-content opportunities in what you were saying, Jennifer. We were talking about environmental science is something that's supposed to be in GSS in California now, right? So there's ways we could bring that in. And I think to your point, Frank, there are a lot of us that are on this call, that are on this webinar, we are really interested in technology and its impacts, and we follow these things, and not everyone does. And so it may be that we just need to start talking about it a little bit more, right? Hey, did you know that this amount of water is being used to cool these data centers? I just learned that. Wow, and just kind of having some conversations about, hey, I just saw this article, may be helpful as well. Because again, like Jennifer, like everyone's been saying, this ethical use part is really important as well. So appreciate that. Any other questions? I'm looking in the chat. See some Thank you for dropping those links in there. Excellent. I do want to let you know, I'll keep watching the chat if there are any lingering questions, but I do want to let you know our next steps to support you. So all registrants will be sent an email with a link to the CDE resources, a link to this presentation, a link to the recording once it's ready, and also the opportunity to provide input for Senate Bill 1288, which is the statewide work group that Dr. Ellman was talking about. So what that is, and there'll be a link to this as well, is Senate Bill 1288 calls for California Department of Education to convene a public work group that it has educators, administrators, industry folks, post-secondary, students, parents, right? All of these educational partners to come together and expand the guidance as well as to create a model policy for schools. So I definitely encourage you, if you or someone you know may be interested in applying for that, please apply. The deadline is April 11th. And those meetings will be public as well. So you'll be able to contribute and stay abreast of what's happening that way. I also wanted to let you know that we are celebrating National AI Literacy Day tomorrow with an AI in the classroom celebrating AI Literacy Day, Day of the Class AI in the Classroom webinar. So tomorrow we're going to be learning a little bit more about what does this actually look like, right? So absolutely, that's going to be a great one as well. I did want to let you know as well. Oh, it's not on this slide, but I'll let you know that for our AI work group, our statewide AI work group, if you don't have the time or capacity to join, but you do want to give us some input, there's a survey that I will also include in the email, follow-up email that will go out likely tomorrow, Monday at the latest. And that is an opportunity for you to let us know what's happening in your districts, what's happening in your school, in your community. What are your concerns? We definitely want to make sure that the AI work group represents the diversity of our great state and all of the things that are happening and all of the great work, but also the challenges that communities face. So thank you again to our speakers, and thank you to all of you for being here. And we wish you a fantastic National AI Literacy Day tomorrow.